So, hello everybody and welcome. Yes, welcome back here about BSN Network. Kaduki back here, BSN Network. This is the BSN Network podcast here today. It is Monday, May 17th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. It is in fact Monday, May 17th here today, coming out of another sports weekend. Hopefully everybody had a good weekend and enjoyed it. Start up of another week. It is in fact Monday. I don't like Mondays very much, but there are some games on today. The Yankees are on today. Some more Nhl Playoffs are on today. Obviously, Nets and Knicks are both off until, the playoffs start in the NBA, which the play-in series starts, tomorrow? And then the rest of the games and all that stuff starts on Saturday or Sunday, whichever your team gets scheduled in. So that's really exciting. I'm super fired up about the NBA playoffs like I was with the NHL. I'm going to make a bracket for the NBA. Except this time, I am going to have a team in it. The Nets have made the playoffs. They clinched it a long time ago. But yesterday, officially, that we are in. So now now it's playoff time. Now we focus. So, obviously, kind of a lull in the action with the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks, as we have no games up until either Saturday or Sunday. Whenever we play, that's obviously all going to be scheduled, and depending on all the TV times and stuff like that. But hey, the NBA playoffs are upon us. NHL playoffs have already gone underway, so a lot of good stuff coming out of the weekend. To recap the weekend, because there was a lot going on. Obviously, the weekend, there's always a lot going on. That's why going into a Monday, there's always a lot to talk about, whether it was the news that happened during the weekend, whether it's just the fact all the games that happened throughout the weekend. So, obviously, it's super. I'm excited, obviously, for what the week has in store with sports. Obviously, Yankees start up a 4-game set, and then obviously the Nets, start up, about 5 days, 6 days, whenever, about a week from now, I would say, Saturday or Sunday. One of those days, they will play their first round playoff game. So that should be good. But to recap the weekend, Yankees took a tough loss yesterday. The Yankees did take 2 of 3 from the Orioles, so I can't complain too much. I'm not going to sit here and bash them. I mean, I would have loved to take the 3 and to sweep and, head into the Rangers series on a high note, but that was not the case. We obviously play the Rangers now. 4-game set against the Rangers, so an opportunity to try and get at least another 2-3 wins. I mean, the Rangers are, one of these, Rangers are a rebuilding team. So, obviously an opportunity, they're last place in the AL West. I believe they're last placed in the AL West. A team who's last place, so an opportunity to, get a couple wins here. Cole's obviously on the mound today. As a Yankee fan, you got to feel good about that. Anytime Cole's out there on the mound, whether that's against the best team in the league, you got to feel good about it, or whether it's against a team like the Rangers that are struggling, you got to feel even better about it, because you're assuming that Cole's going to go out there and really dominate, and I'm expecting that today out of him again. Obviously, he did it against a good Rays team. I believe he can do it again against a not-so-good Rangers team. So an opportunity for the Yankees I think it's an expectation. We've got to take at least 3. 2 or anything from under 3, I'm not going to be happy with. If we get swept, I'm going to be fired up about it. If we win 1, not going to be okay. If we win 2, I'm not going to like it, but I won't hate it, because at least you took 2. But if you take 3, I'll be okay with it. I would love to get 4. I do believe that you should take 4 from the Texas Rangers. They're not a good team. They're not very good pitching-wise. They're just overall not a great team. We should be able to take 3 to 4 easily against this Texas Rangers team. They do got some big bats in the lineup. I'm not gonna just let that go. They do. They've got some guys, Nate Lau, Gallo and guys like that. But all in all, overall as a team, they're last in their division. So, an opportunity for the Yankees really to take some games here and head back home on a winning note. So that's what we got today. Like I mentioned, NHL playoffs more today. Islanders got the win. Watched that game yesterday. That was an amazing game. I mean, that game was just. I mean, there a lot. That game had a lot of everything. It had physicality. It had It had some really good plays. It had Kyle Palmieri, who had 2 goals. It had OT. 3 of the 4 games. So Three of what? Three of the first games, yes. So the first 3 games of the NHL playoffs went into overtime. The Capitals game versus the Bruins. Capitals ended up winning. Islanders versus the Penguins. Islanders ended up winning. And Wild Vegas, and Wild ended up winning. I got to admit, yes, Cam Talbot got a shutout, and no, I'm not going to sit here and doubt and, bring that, because he got a shutout against a Vegas team that's very good. He got a shutout, I understand that. But Marc-Andre Fleury put on an absolute show. I mean, some of the saves he made, the glove saves, some of the play recognition were just unbelievable. And, the amount of grade A chances that the Minnesota Wild had in that game to only get 1 goal, it just goes to show you how good Marc-Andre Fleury is. Had 40 saves. Yes, they lost, but he had 40 saves. Cam Talbot did get the shutout. That signing has been golden for the Wild. So, we'll get into all that stuff. With that being said, let's get into the topics for today. We got the NHL Playoff update. I don't know if I said this on Friday, but I was planning on doing this. I was planning on talking about the NHL Playoff update. I know Pujols signed with the Dodgers. If I'm going to talk about it, I'll probably talk about it maybe tomorrow. It's not that I think it's a big move, obviously. There's just a lot of other sports going on now, with playoffs and, with the Nets and the Knicks, especially me as a New York sports fan. There's a lot going on involving New York sports. The Islanders are in the playoffs. The Nets and the Knicks are both in the playoffs, right? You got the Yankees and the Mets playing right now. So there's a lot going on around what I mainly focus on New York sports. So, obviously, I will talk about other stuff, but, with everything going on, I really wanted to get to the NHL playoffs because I was going to talk about it, but all these games were so good. I mean, all these games were so good. There wasn't one blowout. All the games were decided by 1 goal. The Capitals game was decided by 1 goal. The Islanders game was decided by 1 goal. Wild Vegas game was decided by 1 goal. And same thing with the Tampa Bay Lightning Florida Panthers was also decided by 1 goal. So they were all 1-goal games. There was no blowouts, and I like that. With me not having a team, or as some people say, well, not having a dog in the fight, I'm always, I just root for a good game. And obviously, I do want to see my bracket go as perfectly as it can. So I would love to see, the Islanders win the first round series. And then I would like to see, some of these other teams pull it off because that means my bracket's correct. When I don't have a team in it, my bracket is really what I root for. And honestly, not even just that. I just root for good games. And I'm always, I will always take an underdog. Like, let's just say the Nashville Predators or let's say the Montreal Canadiens knock off the Maple Leafs and they knock off whoever they play in the second round. And just like that, they're 1 game away from the Stanley Cup. Sure, I might root for them because they're the underdog. No one expected them to get that far. But I'm just enjoying the hockey, enjoying the playoffs. I'll get into the update, talk about the games, all that good stuff. Then I wanted to get to the Nets and the Knicks. I haven't talked about basketball in a while. I talk about basketball every day, but I'm talking about actually having a main topic other than just leaving it for the New York Sports Update. I haven't talked about basketball that much. I mean, not that I'm avoiding it. There's just been so much other news, and also, basketball, when it kind of came down to the final 15 games of the season, Nets already clinched. It looks like the Knicks were going to make the playoffs. It was kind of like, what is there to talk about? Like, it's not like the Nets are still battling for a playoff spot. Like, they were already in. At this point, I'm just zoned in on playoffs, and that's how it was. When the Nets clinched their playoff spot, I just wanted playoffs to get here. That's all I wanted. So, they're finally here. Get into the Nets and the Knicks. Get into the NBA. Just overall, look at some of the playoff picture. I'm not going to make my predictions today. I'll make my bracket another day. Obviously, play-in series starting tomorrow. I'm not going to make my bracket with the play-in series. When the playoffs are set, I'll make my bracket on Friday because then that's going into the weekend. I'm not going to make my bracket tomorrow and predict all the play-in series games. I will predict those games, alone, and then I'll make my bracket when everything's set. So we'll get into that. We'll finish off the New York Sports, or the New York Sports podcast. The podcast with the New York Sports Update. Get into all that good stuff. Yankees play today. Mets play today. Not many MLB games on today. That's not surprising, though. Usually Monday, there tends to be not many games. That's around sports. Although the NHL, we got 4 games on today, or 3 games rather, on today. Bruins Capitals, game 2 of that series. Predators Hurricanes, game 1. And then you got the Blues Avalanche, also game 1. So, Mondays usually tend, coming out of a weekend, tend not to have too much. But today, Yankees, Mets are playing NHL playoffs. So, actually a good amount for a Monday. Usually Mondays, there's only a couple games on here and there, and then it kicks back up on Tuesday again. But with all that being said, this is the BSN Podcast, and let's get right into it. So, I mentioned this on Friday. I said it on Friday. I say it all the time, right? All four of the sports are great. Hockey, basketball, baseball, and football. Now, that's my opinion. Some of you might only watch football. Some people might only watch baseball. Some people might only watch hockey. There's so many different combinations. Some people might only watch baseball and hockey and football, hockey and basketball, whatever it is. Some people might not watch sports at all. Some people might only watch whatever it is. The four major sports I talk about, I love them all. They're all great, especially when it comes to playoff time. But there's something slightly different, I feel like, sometimes when it comes to playoff hockey. Just the atmosphere, the fans. The fans are so energetic when it comes to NHL playoff hockey. And I'm not going to say, because obviously you could say the same thing about all the other sports, but there's something about playoff hockey that just sometimes is a little different from the other sports. And maybe that's because I've never, the Jets, for example, have not made the playoffs in a long time, so I haven't really experienced what it's like having a favorite team in the playoffs. The Nets have struggled for all these years. They have made the playoffs the past couple seasons, but nothing major. The Rangers, I've experienced many playoffs, with them. So maybe it's just because I've probably seen more playoffs from my favorite team. Yankees, obviously, too, in the MLB. Definitely seen a lot of playoffs out of them. But something about playoff hockey is just a little different than some of the other sports. And yesterday and Saturday, because a lot of people, you can't forget about that Capitals-Bruins game. Although it seems like a little bit ago, because all yesterday's games, that Capitals-Bruins game kicked off what ended up to be a great weekend in hockey. And obviously we got 3 games today. Capitals-Bruins game 2, and then you got the Hurricanes-Predators game 1 of that series, and the Avalanche Blues kick off their series as well. So those are 3 games on today. I'll get into those here in a little bit. But this weekend, everyone always talks about, you always want to see good games in sports. You always do. And what we saw this weekend was just excellent hockey. Aggressiveness, a lot of shooting, a lot of hard work. Just a lot of hard, physical, fast play. And that's not really a surprise because it is playoff hockey and we expect that. But just the games this weekend, the quality of the games. Like, I wasn't sitting there watching a game being like, oh, this one's over. I wasn't. Even after the Penguins, took that little bit of that, I think it was a 2-goal lead, or was it a 2-goal lead? Yeah, I think it was right? Wasn't it 3-1, and then the Penguins came back, or Islanders came back, or was it? I might be getting it wrong, but I don't. Either way, though, it was obviously. Let's see here. So it was 3-2 to 2-1. Okay, so it was 2-1, and then 2-2, then 3-2. But yeah, so obviously it was an excellent game, obviously. And even though, the Penguins ended up scoring back-to-back goals, they took that, that 2-1 lead, and you're kind of thinking, maybe they could run away with that. I wasn't sitting there watching that game like, oh, yeah, this one's over. I knew that game was still going to be, good. Obviously, I had the Yankees game on, but I also had the other game on as well. And that was two very, that was a good game there. And I talked about Kyle Palmieri as well, a guy I said, there's certain signings. There's signings that will help your team a little bit, and then there's signings that are going to boost your team, and there's signings that are really going to help out your team. And I said that about the Kyle Palmieri, Travis Zajac trade at the trade deadline. They made it a little bit before that. But I said, now I don't know if I said it was a trade that's going to completely take the team from a contender to a Stanley Cup champion. I don't think I said that. If I said that, I'd be lying to you. But I did say this is going to really improve this team, especially when it comes around to playoffs. Sure enough, Kyle Palmieri scores 2 goals, and that second goal is the game winner in overtime. And the first goal was to get him on the board. So he made 2 very big goals. He got the scoring started, and then he got the game winner. Those are arguably the 2 biggest goals in the game. You always got to get the first one out of the way. And that tends to happen sometimes in sports. The first 5 minutes of the playoffs usually might be, first 5-10 minutes, whether that's in basketball, football, hockey, or baseball. Baseball, it might be the first couple innings. Sometimes it's a little bit of rust, nerves, stuff like that. Sometimes it's a little bit of a slow start. And you sometimes see that with teams where in the first 5 minutes, it just might seem like they're just, it's just a lot of, overskating, overpassing, not shooting enough. And sometimes you see that. But I didn't really see that yesterday. Now, early on in that Penguins-Islanders game, you might have saw a little sloppiness with the Islanders. They were, Penguins really pounded their zone early. But the Islanders were able to obviously bounce back. So I wanted to get into all the games and kind of talk about them, almost like I do with the football. Kind of just give you an update. Like I said, they were all great games. Like I said, all the games were decided by one goal. 3 of the 4 games this weekend went into overtime. I know the Flames-Canucks game, that was a regular season game. They went into overtime. Flames won. Not trying to be mean, I don't care about that game. That's a game that's a regular season. Due to COVID, it got pushed back. So they're playing now. I really care about the playoffs. Obviously, Friday's game, the Capitals won 3-2 in overtime. The Capitals take a 1-0 series lead. Now, there's a stat, and I don't know if it's for every sport or if it's only for the sport I heard it from. I don't remember where I heard it's from. But if you win the first game of the series, now I've probably said this a million of times, whether it's on this podcast or when I'm talking to someone else outside of the podcast. If you win the first game, I believe you have like a 72% chance to win the series or something like that. Something like 72% chance or something like that. You have a very high chance. Now, we have seen where game 1, it doesn't matter when you win. We saw with one of the biggest chokes in NBA history was the Warriors going up 3-1 on the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs were already an underdog, let alone down 3-1. They were even more of an underdog. Warriors had home field advantage. Warriors were the best team in the NBA, and the Cavs were able to get the job done. They ended up coming back, winning that series in 7 games. So that's one of the most notorious. There's so many other times where teams have been able to come back. The Yankees did it once, I believe, in the 90s. They were, down like 3-1 or something, and they ended up coming back against the Braves, I believe, something like that. So there's many times, but it is big to take the first game of the series. And the Washington Capitals did that on Saturday night. They won 3-2 in overtime. As much as I hate to say it, obviously, as much as I hate to say it, he got the job done. Tom Wilson scored the first goal of the series. He scored the first goal of the playoffs, scored the first goal of the series, scored the first goal of everything. It was the first of everything for the 2021 NHL playoffs. And obviously, it was a really good game from start to finish. Obviously these were 2 teams we knew that were going to be battling it out. Obviously Tom Wilson scored, assisted by TJ Oshie and Daniel Sprong at 6:22 in the first period. Obviously Oshie obviously it was a nice feed, and Wilson got it. He went top shelf to the left. And Tristan Jarry, I noticed in the game against the Capitals on Saturday. Tristan Jarry, I noticed, and we noticed this a lot. Or not Tristan Jarry, rather. I'm sorry. Tuukka Rask. My bad. Tristan Jarry, 2 on the Islanders. Tristan Jarry's on the Penguins. My bad. Tuukka Rask. I noticed that, in the beginning part of the game, he was doing well, but there was a couple he made some saves. He definitely made some saves. Obviously, he made 29 saves, but I feel like there was a couple times in that game where it's almost like, there was a couple opportunities where the Capitals they just missed. But definitely early in that game, they found a weakness on, Tuukka Rask. And that same thing goes for Tristan Jarry as well. I'll get to him in a little bit with the Islanders. But Tuukka Rask, early on in that game, that's a tough goal to let up. You're 3 minutes and 22 seconds into the game. It's early. It's an opportunity to try to just get your team off to a quick start. And the Capitals pounded their zone really early in that game. And that was something that was tough. They really pounded their zone early. They were really just able to just get going. And the Capitals got the job done. And he went top shelf, Tom Wilson. And I felt like from there on, I know the Bruins ended up scoring some goals. Obviously, Vanacek got injured for the Capitals. And Anderson had to come in, who's 40 years old, I believe, something like that. And the guy's playing in playoff hockey, ended up playing really well. But obviously, it's just an opportunity to really, take advantage of, Tuukka Rask early in that game. And they ended up taking advantage of him. And I feel like, even though the Bruins came back, and obviously and all that stuff, I still feel like in a way, the Capitals still were controlling the tempo in that game. They beat them 32 shots to 26 shots. Now, face-off percentage by the Bruins was better. Power play was better. The Bruins also had more penalty minutes. But you look at the physicality standpoint, definitely, hits-wise, I felt like Capitals were more the quicker and physical team throughout the game. And I feel like just to start the game especially. I do. They were the more quicker and physical team to start. They had 10 more hits to them. They were drawing a couple more penalties, but that's also because I think they're just a physical team, and the Capitals do draw a lot of penalties. It's going to happen. So I feel like in a way, even though it was only a one-score game, I definitely feel like the Capitals definitely, period by period, it definitely seemed like they were the more physical and quicker team. Then at 13-10, goal scored by Jake DeBrusk, assisted by Curtis Lazar. That tied it at 1-1. That was the scoring for the first period. Then in the second period, a goal by Brendan Dillon, assisted by Anthony Mantha and one of the all-time greats, Alex Ovechkin. That took the lead to 2-1. And then, the Bruins again. I felt like the Bruins this whole game, they were playing catch-up, right? They went down 1-1, then they tied. Then they were back down 2-1, then they tied again. That's an issue. I said it a couple times with the Yankees this year. If the Yankees keep losing games early in the year, they're going to be climbing them out in this whole game, this whole season. And I felt like that was how the Bruins were. They were never able to completely catch up. Because then they tied with 16:38, a power play goal by Nick Ritchie, assisted by David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy. But then 4:41 in the third period, which this at first was scored TJ Oshie's goal, but then after replay, it was Nick Dowd. He tipped it in. It was a goal by Nick Dowd and assisted by TJ Oshie and Tom Wilson, and that was 3-2. So you got to look at it this way. Like, yes, the Bruins only lost by one goal. Yes, they were able to climb their way back after down 1-0, then 1-1, then down 2-1, and they made it 2-2, and they lost 3-2, obviously. But in terms of physicality, in terms of speed of the game, I feel like the Bruins were never able to fully catch up with the Capitals. And that kind of shows when you look at the goal scoring. The Bruins were never able to get a lead. They were always having to come back. It was 1-0, then it was 1-1. Then the Capitals scored again, then the Bruins scored. Then the Capitals scored, and that was in overtime. That was the game. And, the Bruins obviously their backup goalie was in. Anderson was in. It was their backup goalie. So the Bruins also had a golden opportunity to take advantage of that. And Vitek Vanacek has been great this season. But if the Bruins want to come back in this series, they definitely got to jump on the Capitals early. Because the Capitals jumped on the Bruins early, and the Bruins were never able to fully recover. And they ended up losing 3-2. Not saying the Bruins played bad, but the Capitals were much more physical. They were quicker, and they had that game. They took the lead early, and they really didn't give it up. I know it was 1-1, then it was 2-1, then it was 2-2. I understand that. But the Bruins the whole game found themselves playing catch-up, while the Capitals were just continuing to pour it on. So the Capitals win game 1 in that series, 3-2. Then you go into the Sunday games. Obviously, that was the only playoff game on Saturday. Then you go into Sunday, and you kick it off with the Islanders and the Penguins. And the Islanders now lead the series 1-0. Obviously, the Islanders got the scoring started with a goal by Kyle Palmieri, and I said this when they made the deal, right? I said this when they made the deal. This is a guy that's going to improve the team. He definitely is. He's going to help a lot. And, even though you might say, Kyle Palmieri hasn't had a great year this year, and when he went to the Islanders, and I'm going to be real with you. I'm going to be completely honest with you. In the regular season, when they got him, Kyle Palmieri wasn't that great, right? Especially when he got to the Islanders. He only scored 2 goals in his time with the Islanders this entire season. So it was definitely good to see him get into the scoring. But another thing, too, I noticed here was this game, and you see this in playoffs. I didn't overall see this with all these games. I more saw it with this game mainly. And maybe this is just because the Islanders are relatively, they got some young guys in that team. And, they're kind of, they kind of were a little bit, they weren't playing their best hockey early. But the first goal in this game was scored 7 minutes and 58 seconds in. So, I would say the first 5 minutes of this game was played in the neutral zone. And I understand that the Penguins did add some pressure early in that game, and I'm not gonna not say that that's not true. They did add some early pressure, but I felt with the Islanders, a lot of this game early in the game was a lot of just neutral zone, and it was a lot of just clearing the puck, getting opportunity, putting it into your zone, and getting it, and now something like that, all that kind of stuff. Just a lot of just getting the puck up the ice. Maybe you get an opportunity here. It's not that great of an opportunity. And then they back up the Penguins go. I found that the first couple minutes, the Islanders definitely got off to a little bit of a slower start. They definitely did. And I don't think you can't argue that. If you watch that game, you literally could tell they got off to a little bit of a slow start. Then they started to pick it up a little bit. They started to get some pressure. And why the Islanders won this game? Now, it was great goaltending by Sorokin. Obviously, he had a good game. He had 42 saves, or 39 saves, rather. 49 of those were on 49 shots on goal. He had 39 saves. I understand that. For a guy that's a backup playing, and I believe that was his first playoff game, he's a rookie, right? For a guy coming into that situation where he wasn't expected to, Varlamov got hurt, and who knows when Varlamov's going to return. Now, when I made my bracket, Barry Trotz, the head coach of the Islanders, said that Varlamov should be ready to go, but obviously he wasn't fully ready. And now you're looking at Sorokin taking over, and definitely he had to make some big saves early. He obviously made the great big ice skate, toe save from Crosby. But the first goal was obviously 7:58, goal scored by Kyle Palmieri, assisted by Jean-Gabriel Pageau and Noah Dobson. And oh my gosh, has Jean-Gabriel Pageau been a pickup for them? He has had a great year this year. He has continued to be good. He continues to get better. It's almost like every game he's doing something that's better than it was. And, he's just continuing to get better and improve. And he's had a great year, and he continues it with that assist. And Palmieri went top shelf. Palmieri did. And I felt like from there on, obviously they were able to get the goal. But then they started, to loosen up a little bit, I thought. Their defense was good early in the game. Then they started to, almost get, loosen up a little bit on defense, and that didn't help them. But one thing I noticed with the Islanders this game was they exposed a big weakness on Tristan Jarry. And they did it. Tristan Jarry had a really tough yesterday's game. Had a really tough day just stopping the shots that were up, at his shoulders, glove area. And, a lot of times, people are going to blast Jarry for this. They are. But it's very hard to make an in-game adjustment. And he's going to have to make that adjustment sometime between today and when tomorrow's game gets faced off. Because the Islanders, they were applying a lot of pressure, and a lot of their shots were up in Jarry's weakness. And that's the issue. And, that was an issue there. It was kind of the top shelf, high shot, and Jarry wasn't able to get the glove up there in time. And they were exposing that weakness a lot yesterday. Palmieri did it early in the game, and they continued to do it. Then 11-10, a goal scored by Frederick Gaudreau, or whatever, however you say his name, Gaudreau, and then assisted by Evan Rodriguez. He got the puck. He had an open lane too. They were screening Sorokin, but he was able to get an open shot off. There wasn't much crowd. There was like a little area right here. He got it in the net. That was their first period scoring. It was 1-1 after that. Then quickly, 3:47 into the first period, a goal scored by Sidney Crosby, assisted by Brian Dumoulin and Jake Gensel. And oh my gosh, was this one of the biggest goals. I mean, Crosby was double teamed. He was getting pushed out from screening the goalie. And it was a shot. And Crosby just stuck out his stick. It hit his stick and bounced in. And, I mean, you talk about hand-eye coordination. You talk about a great play. A big-time play by Crosby there at 3:47. 2-1. And the Penguins now are winning 2-1 going into the third period. So, for a team with the Islanders who had a solid first period, it was tied 1-1. Then they come out in the second period, Penguins score. The Islanders just weren't able to really get anything going in the offensive zone in the second period. You then go to the third, and I don't know what happened, if Barry Trotz said something to them or whatever, but quickly, 3 minutes and 33 seconds into the third period, a goal scored by Jean-Gabriel Pageau, assisted by Scott Mayfield, and then again, 15:50 into the third period, a goal scored by Brock Nelson, assisted by Anthony Belvillier and Ryan Pulock, and that's a 3-2 game. And the Islanders did let this one slip away from them a little bit. You got a 3-1 game with 5 minutes left to go. You got to assume in about 2 minutes the Penguins might pull their goalie. All you got to do is just apply some pressure, and they don't do that. About a minute and so later, actually a little bit less than a minute later, a minute and 31 seconds later, the Penguins score. Goal scored by Kasperi Kapanen, assisted by Jeff Carter and Cody Seshi, however you say his name. So, there it is. You score a goal, you got to be thinking, okay, this is golden. We score a goal with 15:50 into it, and then, 31 seconds later, or a minute, and, not even 31, it was 31 seconds later. They end up scoring a goal, the Penguins, And that's got to be frustrating for Barry Trotz. Now, you head into overtime. Luckily, the bleeding stopped there. It's 3-2. You head into overtime, and it took a long time to find a goal. But 16:30 goal scored by Kyle Palmieri, assisted by Jean-Gabriel Pageau and Oliver Wahlstrom. And you look at the guys that you expect to make plays. Belvillier had an assist. Pageau had a goal and 2 assists. Palmieri had 2 goals. Wahlstrom had an assist. Dobson had an assist. Mayfield had an assist. Pollock had an assist. You look at this team, and they might not have the biggest names in the world, but it's a lot of young, it's some veterans, it's a lot of guys that just play hard, play together, do the job, and the Islanders got the job done. 4-3, they got the win, and I said it when I made my bracket. This team is a lot better than a 4 seed, and they showed it in that game yesterday. Obviously, there was a couple parts, scoring a goal, then 31 seconds later letting up a goal is obviously got to be frustrating, but you still got the job done. Now you move into tomorrow's game. You get a day off today. You go into tomorrow's game. If you win tomorrow's game, you go home with a 2-0 series lead, and boom, just like that, there's an opportunity to at least go up 3-1, at least win one in your home building. I don't think the Penguins will get swept. I think they're too good to get swept, but I do believe there's an opportunity here. If the Islanders continue to play like they did, continue to expose a weakness on Tristan Jarry, the Islanders might be able to get this series done earlier than people think. So the Islanders got the win there, 4-3. Next game, there was a lot of action, very little scoring. And this is what I think might throw people off about hockey, is a lot of people might say, oh, it's a 1-0 game, that's got to be so boring. That's not the case. I actually found this game, I watched this game. I actually found this game to be very entertaining. I watched this entire game. I found this to be a very entertaining hockey game. Even though it was 1-0, the chances, the highlight reel saves by Marc-Andre Fleury, it was just unbelievable. And Cam Talbot, you got to clap it up for him. A guy who the Wild signed in the offseason. I don't think many people even expected the Wild. Some people might have expected them, but with a young team and guys like that, a young team, you kind of expected maybe, a competitive team, but I don't know if many people expected them to make the playoffs, and if they did, win Game 1 against the Vegas Golden Knights, who are one of the favorites to win it all. You look at the scoring here, there was 1 goal, 3 minutes and 20 seconds into overtime, but there was a lot more to this game than the 1 goal. There was a lot of grade A chances. A lot of golden opportunities, and I'm not taking anything away from Vegas, because they got some opportunities themselves, but especially for the Minnesota Wild. They got opportunities everywhere. It almost seemed like every single play there was an opportunity. It almost just seemed like every single time they had the puck, they were getting it on net and they were getting an opportunity. And they weren't just getting an opportunity, they were getting a big-time opportunity. And obviously, Marc-Andre Fleury obviously made... Okay, my bad. So Marc-Andre Fleury made 29 saves yesterday. It was Cam Talbot who made 40 saves, so that was my fault. But the Minnesota Wild, they only had 30 shots on goal, and I understand that. But 29 of those were saved, but at least 15 of those had to be grade A chances. And I know it was 1-0. It was kind of a relatively boring game in a way, but not boring. It might look like that. Sitting there watching that game, you might be like, oh, where's the scoring? Or if you look at the score and it's 1-0, you're going to be like, oh, that game's boring. That wasn't the case. There was a lot of action in this game. A lot of great chances on goal. I can't even pinpoint one, really, with Marc-Andre Fleury. Really, all I could say is, there was that one where it was a great pass to the center of the net. I forget the exact player, but it was a great pass to the center of the net. The guy literally had to just tip it in. And literally just had to tip it in, and Fleury robbed him. Fleury made a couple of just great saves. There was about, like I said, 7-8 great saves, and there was a couple other good chances where he got them blocked, but I'm talking about great highlight reel saves. And I know Fleury, obviously they lost, I know that, but, it's tough to win when you don't score any goals, and that's how I see it too. This was a battle of the goalies. I said this series was going to go to 7 games, I really did. I do believe this is going to be a close... I think I said 7 games. I do think this is going to be a close series. Vegas is a very good team, and Minnesota is a young and hungry team. And, you look at the 2 goaltenders, and, is this what we're going to get tomorrow night as well? If this is what we're going to get tomorrow night, then we're in for another fun game. I mean, but you just look. I mean, the hits in this game were really big. I mean, there was a lot of hits. 71 hits by the Minnesota Wild, a very competitive and obviously aggressive game. But at the end of the day, the Wild got the job done. They won. Eriksen Ek scored the goal. He had a goal. The assist was Foligno and Greenway. Kaprizov had opportunities in front of the net. So did Matt Zuccarello, but was never able to get the job done. Kaprizov had some opportunities, but at the end, it just was not able to, get the job done. And he was obviously, let's see, he had 3 shots on goal. Zuccarello had 5. He had Hartman who had 5. There was a lot of opportunities and a great defensive play. There was one play, like I said, I forget the exact player's name, but there was a great opportunity where it might have been Mark Stone. I'm not sure. But he was to pass it across. And I don't know if it was Marchessault or someone else there. But he was about to pass it across. And if he did, I mean, it's a goal. Because Calbot's all the way hugging the right side of the post. The complete left side's wide open. Now, I'm not criticizing what Talbot did there. He was supposed to do that. But he was about to pass it across ice. The guy on the Wild completely just laid out, stuck his stick out, stopped the puck. And that's a game-changing play right there. So, the scoring, by period, you look at it, there was no goals. There was no goals at all. But at the end of the day, 3 minutes and 20 seconds into overtime, goal scored by Joel Eriksen Ek, assisted by Marcus Foligno and Jordan Greenway. And that got the job done. And that's all I could really say about that game. 66% of people had Vegas going. 34% of people had Minnesota. And I mean, look at what the Wild were able to do early in that overtime. And I noticed that too. Early in overtime, I noticed too. Because obviously, it was a tough penalty. So penalty was Jonathan Marchessault 2 minutes for hooking. But that ended up carrying in to overtime, obviously. That's a big penalty. Because early in overtime, the Wild were able to get pressure on. Even when the penalty was over, they were still getting consistent pressure. And Fleury actually made a really big save about 2 minutes or maybe even 3 minutes into overtime. And then about 20 seconds later, they ended up scoring on Fleury. And that obviously ended the game. When the Wild take a 1-0 lead. And the Wild now head into tomorrow. You got to feel pretty confident, with your goalie back there in Cam Talbot coming off a shutout. You got to feel pretty confident he can get the job done again. So, that's what I got for that game. And the next game that I'm going to talk about here, and then we'll get into, the Nets and the Knicks, was this Tampa Bay, Florida game. I mean, this game was also just an excellent game to watch, an excellent game to see. And I said this on Friday, when I was talking about the Islanders, or not the Islanders, them too, but I was talking about the Lightning and talking about, this series and really talking about the NHL playoffs in general. And I said the Lightning have, I think, arguably one of the best offenses in this series. And in terms of, they might not be the most physical team, although they are very physical against Florida. Physical, you might have to give it to Florida. But when this team gets space, when this team connects with their passing and their goal scoring, they are arguably the best team in the NHL. And that's why they won the championship last season, the Stanley Cup. Because they were such a good goal-scoring team, they were able to pass the puck really well. They were able to get the job done when they needed to. And that's what they did yesterday. And like I said, they fell behind early. They was 2-1 early. They obviously scored a goal to start, and then back-to-back goals by the Panthers led them to get to 2-1. But then they came back and were leading 3-2. And then the Panthers came back with 2 to lead 4-3. And then the Lightning were able to come back and score 2 more, and they were able to win 5-4. It's not a surprise to me that this game was the highest scoring game of all the games that happened over the weekend. Obviously 3-2, 4-3. This game totaled up to 9 goals. That's not a surprise to me. That's really not. And 48% of people had Lightning winning this game. A lot of people are really doubting the Lightning, and they're doing it because of how the final couple of games went for the season. You can't judge them off of the final couple games of the season. I'll tell you why. Okay? They were without Steven Stamkos. Some of us knew, not all. I was surprised to see Kucherov back. They were without Nikita Kucherov. He obviously has not played since last year's Stanley Cup. He scored 2 goals yesterday. But they were without Steven Stamkos. That's a big thing. And without him, they did not look that good. But with Brayden Point, Stamkos, Kucherov, all those guys in the lineup, Cirelli, they are all key assets to this team. And I still believe Vegas, Avalanche, Maple Leafs, Oilers, out of all those teams out there, I still believe the Lightning might very well have the best offense, the best team in terms of getting shots, getting, open opportunities, getting good chances, not just shooting the puck, getting very good chances. And even they could turn an ant chance and turn it into a really good chance with passing, creating space, and getting to the net. And that's what they did yesterday. They fell down early 2-1. They obviously scored the first goal, but then they fell down early 2-1. They came back with 2. Then the Panthers came back with 2. Then the Lightning said, hey, right back at you. We'll score 2 more. And sure enough, those 2 goals they scored in the end were ultimately the tying goal and were the game-winning goal yesterday. So a big win for the Lightning. They obviously went into Florida. The crowd was wild. There was a lot of hitting. Lightning got the job done. They went in there and took care of business. Now let's look at some of the goal scoring here. So 7:42 was a goal scored by Blake Coleman, assisted by, this was a shorthanded goal. Goal scored by Blake Coleman, assisted by Yanni Gourde and Ryan McDonough. Then at 9:41, the Panthers scored a power play goal by Alexander Barkov, assisted by Jonathan Heberdrew and Keith Yandel. A goal scored by, then at 16:31, a goal scored by Carter Verhaeghe, assisted by Alexander Barkov and Keith Yandel. I noticed something like this. All the players you named, they all made impacts in this game. Like, none of the surprising players. Like, there wasn't a player that went out there and made a surprising impact. Now, you might say that Kucherov did just because of the fact that he's coming off of hip surgery and he hasn't played since last year's Stanley Cup. So I guess you could say that. But he's that good. He's really good. I mean, it's a guy who can honestly fit in anywhere and be successful. And then to start off the second period, 4:58 power play goal scored by Nikita Kucherov, assisted by Victor Hedman and Steven Stamkos. Then at 14:51, a power play goal scored by Nikita Kucherov, again assisted by Victor Hedman. Like I said, nothing surprising here. Kucherov 2 goals, Hedman with an assist, Stamkos with an assist. Brayden Point ended up scoring the final 2 goals of the game, including the game-winning goal. Then you go into the third period, and that's where a lot of the action happened. 4 goals in the third period. 127 into the third period, goal scored by Jonathan Huberdeau, assisted by Sam Bennett and Owen Tippett. Then at 4:09, goal scored by Owen Tippett, assisted by Jonathan Huberdeau and Sam Bennett. So the complete opposite there with those guys. 3-3, then 4-3. Panthers take the lead. Now, it was a little bit here, 9 minutes until the Lightning ended up scoring their next goal. But they ended up scoring 13 minutes here. A power play goal scored by Brayden Point, assisted by Nikita Kucherov and Victor Hedman. And in 18:46, a goal scored by Brayden Point, assisted by Ryan McDonough. And that got the job done. There was a minute and 14 left in that game. Was not enough time for the Florida Panthers to come back in that game. And sure enough, the Tampa Bay Lightning take game 1. Now, one of the things I would say, if you're the Lightning, you got to kick yourself for all the power play goals you let up. You gave up 3 power play goals, and you gave up a shorthanded goal. That is unacceptable if you're the Florida Panthers. For a team that is very good defensively, and when it comes to discipline and stuff, that is a very frustrating way to lose a game. Shorthanded goal, and to let up 3 power play goals, including the one to tie the game, is very frustrating. And the Lightning will make you pay. If you give up a dumb penalty, the Lightning will make you pay. And they did that yesterday. So the Panthers got to clean up that part. And they also got to figure out a way to stop the shorthanded goals. That cannot happen. To start off a game, to have 7:42 into a game, let up a shorthanded goal. The Panthers, you get an opportunity. You're on the power play. You get an opportunity here. You're like, we could take an early lead. And you don't do that. That's got to be very frustrating. That's got to be deflating for a team. That does. That's got to be deflating for a team. So, sure enough, I mean, and that's the other thing, too. The Lightning had a lot of penalties in this game, and so did the Panthers. I believe if you look at the numbers, the penalties might have evened out. Okay, so 18 penalty minutes for the Florida Panthers and 16 for the Lightning. So, in a way, it was almost even there. But, I mean, if you're the Panthers, you got to be better on the penalty kill. 3 power play goals plus a shorthanded goal, very, very bad for the Panthers. But the Lightning got the job done. They won 5-4, and they take game 1 of the series. Now, you look at today's games, you got the Bruins Capitals, Hurricanes Predators, and Avalanche Blues. So you got all those games to get to today. I will get to those games in a little bit when I do the New York Sports Update. So, hey, but yesterday, first games of the playoffs, really, really exciting. And obviously, the full playoffs haven't gotten underway. The North Division has not started yet. So, the Central and the West and the East have all started. Now, the Central, second game of the Central starts today, and the first game of the West the second game of the West as well starts today. So, we'll see. All this Avalanche hype, winning the President's Trophy, all this. Will they be able to live up to it? We'll find that out today and obviously throughout their series against the Blues. So, definitely a lot of great games, through the first 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. And I'm hoping, and I'm sure many of you who watch hockey are hoping for the same thing. A lot of great games, a lot of great, scoring, and a lot of just great talent on display. So, we'll get into all the games today in a little bit. But coming up next, we're going to get into the Nets and the Knicks. They've both made the playoffs. I will tell you why this is intriguing, not only for the NBA, but for New York sports in general. I'll talk about that coming up next. All right, so first of all, we see this a lot of times in sports. Not a lot of times, I should actually say, but sometimes in sports. You have your rivalries, you have your, battles between teams, and then you have your teams that are, in the same state, city, whatever, right? New York sports, for example. The Nets and the Knicks both play in New York. Now, the Knicks are, I would say, more of, the main team in New York when it comes to basketball, and the Nets are kind of more of the outside team. They're in Brooklyn. They're not, Madison Square Garden. They came here. The Nets came to the New York, Brooklyn about 9 years ago, because of the fact that they obviously left New Jersey and ended up going to New York. So there's obviously a lot of opportunities for great matchups when it comes to that. And we've seen that before in New York sports. Obviously every year we all tune in for the Yankees and the Mets when it comes to the Subway Series. The Nets and the Knicks play each other every year, and that's obviously great. Obviously it's even better when you had two teams that were battling it out for playoffs and that were competitive, and, two teams that, obviously were, capable of making the playoffs. Obviously the Knicks, not many people expected that coming, but when the Knicks, got their season underway and were playing good, a lot of people said, hey, watch out for the Knicks. But I wanted to say this. We saw it with the Yankees and the Mets before. Sometimes, especially for New York sports, because New York sports, I would say, is not in the greatest place ever. New York sports has not witnessed a championship in a relatively long time. The Giants, actually, I believe, are the last team to win a championship. That was back in 2011. Between the Islanders, the Rangers, the Knicks, the Nets, the Jets, the Giants, the Yankees, and the Mets. All of those teams, all the teams on this board right here, have yet to really bring a title, yet to bring super energy to the thing. And I gotta name a couple teams. Like the Knicks, they've been rebuilding really since 2012. The Jets have also been rebuilding. The Giants have not really had a very successful team since that 2011 season. The Mets have struggled. The Yankees have made the playoffs, but they haven't been able to get to the next level. Rangers have made the playoffs. We're now going through a slight rebuild. The Islanders have been able to get to the playoffs. They have not been able to get to the next level. The Nets are just now, with their big three and all the talent they got on their roster, just now really battling for a championship. So you look at all the teams, And New York sports, I would say, hasn't had that one special team or those two couple of teams to really, really be like that, like, to really fall back on. To really fall back on. And, I understand. You could say, oh, well, the Yankees have been good. They've made the playoffs. I get that. But in terms of championships, like the LA last season had a blast. The Dodgers won a championship. The Lakers won a championship. Right? New York sports, we really haven't. I think they range, unless if I'm wrong, the Giants are the last team to win a championship in New York sports. Now, unless if I'm wrong, and please tell me if I am, because I don't want to sound stupid, but I believe the Giants, when they beat the Patriots for the second time, is the last time a New York sports team has won a championship. So, you might be thinking, what the heck are you talking about? Well, I thought we were talking about the Nets and the Knicks. Well, I'm talking about the Nets and the Knicks because there's a chance that the Nets and the Knicks meet in the playoffs. And that will be pivotal for not only the NBA and sports, but for New York sports. Because these are two teams that have honestly been the laughingstock of the league for the past couple years. It's not until the Nets were able to finally get to the playoffs against the Sixers in, 2019. Then last year, it was such an odd year. Obviously, with Kyrie, and he got injured. And now this year was the big year. And obviously, we picked up hard and also throughout the season. But you look at it and you're like, wow, we finally got two good basketball teams here. And you look at the Nets and the Knicks, and there's an opportunity that these two teams play each other in the Eastern Conference Finals. And that would be, just crazy. If that happens, the entire sporting league would just go insane. It really would. It would just be unbelievable, how big that would be. And there's a chance. Because the winner of the Knicks-Hawks plays the winner of the 76ers and the 8th seed. And then after that, they would head to the Eastern Conference Finals. And then the winner of the Nets would play the Hawks or either Bucks, Heat. And then the winner of that would head. If the Nets and the Knicks were to make the Eastern Conference Finals, that would blow up around sports, especially New York sports. It would give fans an opportunity to watch those games, see it like it's the Battle of New York. It gets hyped in the regular season, let alone if that were to happen in the postseason, in the Eastern Conference Finals, in the season where not many people thought the Knicks were going to get there. And if the Knicks made the Eastern Conference Finals in general, everyone would be going insane. The New York Knicks, a team who really nobody had going anywhere. And now we're sitting here talking about them making the playoffs. Okay, it is really crazy. It really is crazy how this has happened. But in terms of the Nets and the Knicks, this is, two teams. The Knicks are gonna have a really good chance to beat the Hawks, and the Nets are gonna have a good chance to beat whoever the 7th seed is. That will depend on the winner of the Celtics Wizards. Obviously, Nets come in 2 seed, Knicks come in at the 4 seed. And the Nets are getting healthy at the right time. Knicks are just a team that just play really solid defense and just are a lot aggressive and play hard. This is going to be fun to watch the playoffs unfold. And I hope that both these teams find success. Now, if the Knicks lose first round, obviously the Nets. But, it would be great. Obviously, I definitely think the Nets have a good shot to get places. But, it would be great to see these two teams battle it out. It really would. Now it's going to be tough. From both teams obviously got to do their end of the share. Obviously the Knicks got to win, and so did the Nets. They got to win 2 series before they get there, but that would be something else if that really happened. But yeah, Nets and the Knicks both in the playoffs, and the Knicks team with Tom Thibodeau, and you talk about coaching. What he's had on his team. You wonder all these years if it really was just the coach. Obviously, the Knicks have not had much talent, but this is a very similar team to last year, and they really struggled. And you look at now this year, and you got Thibodeau there, and they've completely changed the culture and completely changed the layout of that team. And now you're sitting here looking at them making the playoffs and looking at them maybe winning a series or 2. I don't think they'll win the finals, but maybe they win a series and maybe they're competitive in the second series. And as for the Nets, the goal has been the same since the season started, and the bar got even raised higher when Harden got here. The goal was to win a championship. When Harden got here, now it's literally the Nets are going to win. It's literally people believe that the Nets are going to get the job done, no problem. So we'll see how it plays out. But it is really great to see both New York sports basketball teams in the playoffs. And it's going to create great conversations. It's going to create a lot of great energy around the sport. So that's what I got on that. But let's get into, obviously, the New York sports update and all that good stuff. As for the NHL, like I mentioned, today we got the Bruins Capitals. This game's on today, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time at NBCSN. I'm going to give the Capitals the win. I think they take a 2-0 series lead. And the Bruins, I could see them taking at least 2 at home. They seem to be playing better at home, or at least 1 at home. I'll give the Capitals the win. Hurricanes Predators, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on CNBC. I'll give the Hurricanes the win. I think they sweep this 5-game series. I think the Nashville will grab 1 at home, so I'll give the Hurricanes the win. And then Avalanche Blues. This game comes on today, 10 p.m. Eastern Time at NBCSN. Give me the Avalanche. I think the Avalanche sweep this series. As for the NBA, obviously yesterday the Bulls won, Timberwolves won, Lakers won, Jazz won, Trailblazers won, Thunder won, Heat won, 76ers won, Hawks won, Warriors won, Suns won, Wizards won, Knicks won, and Pacers won. Nets also won yesterday, 123-109. We moved to 48-24 on the season. We finished 24 games above 500, and now we get ready for the playoffs. No games on today. They start back up tomorrow, obviously. As for yesterday in the MLB, Padres won, Mariners won, Marlins won, Reds won, Nationals won, Brewers won, A's won, White Sox won, Blue Jays won, Astros won, Angels won, Giants won, Cubs won, and Rays won. Rays swept the Mets. Mets did not look good. Yankees also lost yesterday 10-6. We moved to 22-18 on the season. It's a tough loss, but you got to hope that we bounce back today. Judge has been hitting well. We've been getting a lot of great production from our bats, so that's at least good. As for today in the MLB, the Reds, Giants, I'll give Reds the win. Cubs, Nationals, I'll give Cubs the win. Twins, White Sox, I'll give Twins the win. Angels, Indians, give Angels the win. Dodgers, Diamondbacks, give Dodgers the win. Padres, Rockies, give Padres the win. And Mariners, Tigers, give Mariners the win. Braves, Mets. This game comes on today, 7:10 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Taiwan Walker's on the mound versus Max Fried. I'll give the Mets the win. The Braves just can't seem to get anything going here. I'll give the Mets the win. Walker's been good. As for today's game, the Yankees coming in this game 22-28 or 22-18. Rangers coming in this game 18-24. This game comes on today, 8:05 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find this game on Bally Sports West. But you can also find this game on Yes Network. Garrett Cole's on the mound for the Yankees. Lyles is on the mound for the Rangers. Obviously, Cole, has been dominant this season. And 93% of people say the Yankees will win. So I will join those people and say the Yankees win. Alrighty, so let's see here. Alright, so as for fantasy baseball, I won last week. I won 319 to 295, so a good win. I moved to 4-2 on the season. And today I've got going Yermin Mercedes, Luke Voigt, Jake Cronenworth, Josh Donaldson, and Will Smith. And I've got Garrett Cole on the mound. Injury update, no new stuff in the injury update. As for fantasy basketball, I lost my series, 2,773 to 2,588. So I finished the season there, 7-9 record, obviously finished 4th place. And fantasy hockey as well, no new stuff on that. So the only stuff that's in action right now is fantasy baseball. So that's that. So, obviously, there's a lot of fantasy stuff coming up with, football, and all that stuff. But, we'll see how it all plays out. So, anyway, that's what I got for the podcast. Obviously, fantasy baseball, the only thing that's going on. And fantasy basketball, hockey, obviously all done. Hockey finished a couple days ago. Fantasy basketball finished yesterday. So, it's always, obviously, a little tough, when the season ends, because, that's something I always, I like to do. It's almost like it just gives me something to do, too. check the lineup, make moves, and stuff like that. But I've still got all my other stuff going on. So some people don't even play fantasy baseball. I do. So got fantasy baseball going still. That will be heading all throughout the summer. So I'll have a lot more stuff on fantasy baseball coming there. But with all that being said, that will do it for the podcast here today. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. It was another very, 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 very good podcast. Obviously more NHL playoffs on today. So for those of you who either didn't watch it or don't care or whatever, I would recommend watching it. But if you don't, not the end of the world. But anyway, Yankees today, followed by more NHL playoff stuff, so that should be good. But with all that being said, that will do it for the podcast here today. I will see you all back here tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.